I want to share with you some thoughts on John Cotter's latest book, A Sense of Urgency. How am I going to really convey to you some of the challenges that you face in just a few minutes? Well, I need my own sense of urgency. So here is a sense of urgency. I've just got a few minutes to convince you to buy this book. Let's hope I can do it before the bomb goes off. John Cotter is a fantastic business school professor. About 11, 12 years ago, he launched this book, Leading Change. I hope you can see it there. It's really an 8-step process of leading change, and I spoke to him recently about his work on change and why there was such a need to look at leading change. And he said to me that 70% of all change efforts fail, or they don't reach the levels of success that they're expected. Only 10% of change projects have any degree of success, and those actually succeed above and beyond what people are expecting of them. So he looked closely at those 10% of change projects and developed 8 themes, 8 steps of change, and they are the 8 steps that are included in this book, in Leading Change. And so that is a fantastic look at the whole project of change. But in recent years, he's really begun to look at a couple of themes. And the first is, how do you communicate this? And 2 years ago, he launched another book, Our Iceberg is Melting. Now, I have to be honest with you, I don't entirely get on with that book. It's a management fable, and of course, it's a fantastic way to communicate the idea of change. A bunch of emperor penguins standing around on an iceberg which is melting. How do you convey the challenge of change to people? And I think it was working on that book, he said, that he really began to get a sense that creating a sense of urgency was really important. So that's resulted in this book, and frankly, it's a return to form for me. I think this is a great book. It looks at one key strategy and 4 tactics that'll really help implement change. Let's get right into it. Right here on the book flap, John describes why he's focusing so much on a sense of urgency. He says, increasing urgency is the toughest of the 8 steps in leading change. And without this, even the most brilliant, high-powered initiatives, well-resourced, will sputter and fail. I love that, sputter and fail. Importantly, he also talks about the fact that we need to consider the fact that change is continuous now. It's not episodic as perhaps it used to be. It's not about projects of change anymore. We are constantly changing. And so managing urgency becomes a key capability for us as managers. And that's what I love about this. He talks about how do you create a sense of urgency, but not in a manipulative, pretend kind of way, creating or manufacturing a crisis just to get people to do what you want. And he also raises an important issue. It's here on page 32. He talks about, in one of the most important chapters of the book, complacency. You see, complacency comes about when we have been successful. We're successful. Why should we change? So there are some symptoms here of complacency that you might recognise around your business. Do people have trouble scheduling meetings on important initiatives because my agenda is so full? Do meetings on key issues end and nothing actually happens as a result? These are symptoms of complacency. Do people spend long hours developing interminable PowerPoint presentations about anything, really? So there are some fascinating mechanisms, tactics to help you identify complacency. Now, you might be thinking that in the current recession, we're not suffering from complacency. There's a lot of urgency around right now. And I think one of the hidden gems in this book is really where he talks about false urgency. John's really looking at what I call headless chicken time. There's a lot of people running around right now, and they're headless chickens. They're frantic meetings about nothing, really. Well, about everything. And that's the problem. There's no focus to this. So what he's done in the book, and the bulk of the book is given over to a key strategy and 4 simple tactics to help you instill a sense of urgency and to manage it, to influence the sense of urgency around the business. And it's really worth looking at. he talks about the key strategy of really focusing on hearts and minds. Because if you give people the important facts of a situation, excellent information by itself with the best data and the best logic isn't enough to lead change. It's not enough to instill a sense of urgency. What he talks about is winning hearts and minds. A logical case that's part of a heart-engaging experience using tactics that communicate not only the intellectual rational needs, but emotionally compelling needs. This is going to communicate stretch goals, ambitious goals, that excite and arouse determination to see this through. So it's about winning hearts and minds. And finally, and I think for me overall, it's the closing section on dealing with the naysayers, dealing with the no-nos, that's really important when you're talking about leading change, implementing change. He says quite baldly, quite bluntly, remove or neutralise the no-nos. Now, I find this a difficult message to take, particularly because I work in countries and in cultures where it's sometimes difficult to remove people. So I talk about, in Leadership Unplugged, the first book that Jackie and I wrote, giving naysayers airtime. He talks about neutralising them, distracting them with other projects, and getting rid of them. And there's a huge, long and important section on dealing with the naysayers and the no-nos, with the sceptics. And there's an important table, actually, describing the difference between sceptical managers and the no-nos, and the difference between them. And I just want to share one of the elements with you here. And it's really where he's summarising the bottom line. Sceptics can be annoying. You know, they can slow down your movement and the energy with which you're trying to lead change. But actually they can also be helpful, because they can keep you, as the naive enthusiast, from creating too much damage. So they're a sort of voice of reason, if you like. But the no-no, the naysayer, actually reinforces contentment with the status quo. And that's not what you want when you're trying to lead change. The no-no also raises anxiety and kills a sense of urgency, stopping needed action. Kotter's view is that the no-no is actually very dangerous to change, and therefore to leadership. Dangerous for you. So I think we need to listen very carefully when someone like John Cotter says we need to remove the no-nos. That, of course, is very difficult. And as I think I said, you know, he explicitly says here, if you work in countries where firings, demotion and forced retirements are not realistic possibilities, then you've got to search for options that have the same effect. I think the important message is that you've got to do something about people who are blocking needed change. He really captures it extremely well here, and I'll just close before the bomb goes off with this one quote. Many of us find the push option either distasteful or risky, and it's therefore not seriously considered. But it should be, he says. Ultimately, your choice is clear. Do you allow a person to reduce urgency, to undermine needed action, and hurt the future, the very existence of the organisation? Or do you take steps that may be uncomfortable in the short term, but that deal with this critical issue? Too often, he says, people refuse to take the uncomfortable step. So there is a core strategy here about winning people's hearts and minds, and some great tactics for instilling a sense of urgency. The ultimate question, though, is to you as a manager, as a leader. How much change are you prepared to embrace? Are you prepared to go into the difficult and uncomfortable conversations that are going to get change implemented? How much change are you personally prepared to embrace? I think I just did it in time.